Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. We'll be talking about electoral reforms that are certainly on the agenda as far as this session of the National Assembly is concerned. We've seen the recent controversy as far as NADRA and between the NADRA and Election Commission is concerned over the leaked letter, and what will that come out to be. We'll be talking about that. We'll also be talking about, of course, the opposition and the government that seems to be at this time at loggerheads as far as on this issue of electronic voting is concerned. We'll be talking about that. What will eventually come out as far as electoral reform, as far as electronic voting, the issue of EVMs is concerned, all of that, we'll be talking about all of that today. Also, we'll be talking about the politics of Balochistan and, of course, the vote of confidence against Jam Kamal Saab and the party itself, their party trying to safeguard him. How will the politics in Balochistan shape up in the recent coming weeks? All of that today on Perspective. I have with me Rashid Chaudhry, who is team leader FAFIN. Thank you for joining us. Before we go on, we're going to go to a report on the electoral reforms.
There is a visible rift between the government and Election Commission of Pakistan over the use of electronic voting machines in the upcoming general elections. The government wants to implement electronic voting machines in the next general elections, whereas the Election Commission of Pakistan has raised many objections over the use of EVMs. The Ministry of Science and Technology has prepared EVMs with an intention of using it in the general elections to make the election process free and transparent. Federal Minister Shibli Faraz has repeatedly said that the EVMs are the only way forward to end rigging and make the elections process more transparent. However, the ECP thinks the other way and has repeatedly said that EVM is not trustable as it can easily be hacked and altered. Electoral reforms are need of the hour, and the government believes that the use of technology is the only way forward.
Right. We're also joined by Qamar Dilshad, who's former Secretary Election Commission of Pakistan. Thank you for joining us. Rashid Saab, how do you see this latest controversy between NADRA now and over the leak letter and Election Commission? You know, of course, things were heating up for a while on the issue. We've seen the government and the opposition both, holding a completely different point of view as far as EVMs are also concerned. How do you see it?
We have to see it in the perspective. Actually, the government came up with a bill in October 2020 with electoral reforms amending 49 out of 241 sections of Elections Act 2017.
Right.
That's what we call wholesale electoral reforms. And government wanted to forge a consensus, engage with the opposition and all that. But all of a sudden we saw this ordinance introducing electronic voting machine for the next general elections, and then the overseas voting in their country of residence. That came as an ordinance. But that also was passed by National Assembly in June. Simultaneously, the both bills were passed on the same day. Now we have two bills and two bills pending with the Senate. So Senate Standing Committee on Parliamentary Affairs that rejected the EVM and overseas voting bill and passed the majority of amendments in the electoral reforms bill, the wholesale electoral reforms bill. Unfortunately, the entire focus of the opposition and the government and every stakeholder is on the EVM and overseas voting, which has become a bone of contention between opposition not only opposition parties but also the Election Commission of Pakistan's opinion is also criticized by the federal ministers. So
but you're saying that's not, of course, the whole of when they talk about reform. That's not the main chunk of it.
These are just two amendments. Okay. There are many other amendments in that other bill. Both the bill merit attention of the government and the opposition legislators.
But one would suppose that then there would be an agreement on the other provisions, or you think that they've just not had a chance to look at them?
I don't think that opposition have many objections on the majority of electoral reforms that were introduced in October 2020, but opposition have issues with EVM and overseas voting. So, but now it's time that both parties sat together.
Definitely, but what about this latest issue as far as Nadra and the Election Commission is concerned now at this time? Does it relate to a purview of authority? Does it relate to the ambit within the Election Commission is to act? Because it seems like there is a power tussle of some sort.
Actually, existing law empowers Election Commission of Pakistan to pilot test the internet voting for the overseas voters, or the options for overseas voters. And Nadra was working on that. And Nadra is now working on the system. And Nadra was, according to this news story, was pushing Election Commission of Pakistan to go fast on that. And Election Commission of Pakistan actually pushed it back, saying that we are the constitutional body, you cannot dictate us. So this kind of tussle, but this is also a part of the larger heat that is prevailing around the issue of internet voting and the electronic voting machines.
Okay. Okay, let me come back to you. Ji, Kanwar Sahab, do you agree? You think that, we've been talking about this latest issue as far as between Nadra and the Election Commission is concerned. Do you agree that there is certainly at this time a power tussle of some sort going on, with the Election Commission saying that it has power, it has its own, it's going to act within its own ambit, and it's not going to allow any other body to infringe on its own authority?
In principle, my panelist told you and related all the story about the Nadra and the Election Commission of Pakistan. I am of the view that the Election Commission of Pakistan is a constitutional institution, and Nadra cannot dictate Election Commission of Pakistan to write a letter that we are planning to make a project and scheme of the internet balloting vote. And the Election Commission and demanded. It is surprising, astonishing that Nadra is demanding 2.4 billion rupees from Election Commission of Pakistan to make the system for the internet voting balloting. But on the other hand, the Election Commission of Pakistan gave a shut-up call to the chairman Nadra that you are not a duty, you are not obliged by the Election of Pakistan or the Constitution that you are dictating the Election of Pakistan. It is the Election Commission of Pakistan under Article 218 that we will make the internet balloting system and the project to maintain the secrecy, and the Nadra is nothing to that. And on the other hand, the Election
Commission. Let me interject here. There's an issue of on the fact that already these funds are already in use at this time. They haven't lapsed. They haven't been used as such, the old funds, and now they've asked for new ones. What can you clarify what the situation is as far as that is concerned?
Nadra's role was controversial in 2018 elections. On the 25th July 2018 election, then the RTS system was flopped. And you will be surprised that RTS system was made by the Nadra, and Election Commission of Pakistan paid about 18 crore to Nadra to make this system. But when the system was flopped, Nadra told the chairman, then chairman of Nadra told that it is the responsibility of the Election Commission of Pakistan, not Nadra. Now, on the same ground, when the internet balloting system is going on, the Nadra demanding National Pakistan to please give us 2.4 billion rupees so that we can make the system. The Election Commission of Pakistan told that it is the duty of the Election of Pakistan under Article 218. So that the controversy between the Nadra and the Election of Pakistan is going on. But on the other hand, the Election Commission of Pakistan is a constitutional institution. It is the duty of the ECP to make this system as per law, not Nadra on that ground.
And they haven't agreed, have they? It's not, has the Election Commission hasn't agreed on whether they are going to go ahead with the system at this time, right?
Election Commission of Pakistan have a full-fledged full-fledged team so that to make this system. it is the duty, it is the constitutional duty of the ECP to make this a system, not Nadra. Nadra is under the ECP, ECP is not under the Nadra. So the election commission of Pakistan has refused to give any amount to the Nadra in that matter, and advise the chairman Nadra to please do it according to the law and do the rules of business, and not interfere the ECP in that matter.
Right. Okay. Let me come back to you. We have with us Senator Barrister Ali Zafar. Senator Saab, your opinion on the fact that there seems to be now at this time a clear difference of opinion between the opposition and the government on the issue of EVMs. This recent controversy as far as Nadra is concerned, you know, you're also a lawyer, you're also an eminent barrister. What's your take on this vis-a-vis Article 218, which is what Dilshad Saab was talking about?
It is absolutely clear. The constitutional provision, there's no question, no doubt about it, that the Election Commission of Pakistan is the person, is the institution that's in charge of and obligated to conduct free and fair elections in Pakistan. And the purpose is that there should be an independent, the objective fact is that there should be an independent body, a body that is not connected with the government or the opposition, that is going to conduct the election, so that there is fairness in democracy, and then whoever is elected would then not question the election. This is the principle behind giving this absolute constitutional power to the Election Commission of Pakistan. So in fact, if any other institution like Nadra, for instance, if Nadra tries to dictate anything to Election Commission of Pakistan, then Election Commission of Pakistan is within its right, constitutional right to in fact tell them, don't, stop, you are encroaching upon our jurisdiction. So as far as that aspect of Election Commission of Pakistan jurisdiction is concerned, it is a clear situation. But where
But Senator Saab, as far as the issue with the government is concerned, I mean, you're also a member of the Committee on Electoral Reforms, if I'm not wrong. The situation with, the government and the Election Commission at this time, with clearly this back and forth exchange going on, how do you see this development, considering, of course, that, this is institutions between, with the government and the institutions clearly at loggerheads, with talk of corruption, talk of, this across the board back and forth exchange. How do you see this in terms of the future for electoral reform?
I was just coming to that. So basically, having said that, Election Commission of Pakistan is the constitutional body that is to conduct free and fair elections. At the same time, they have an obligation to conduct those elections according to the laws made by Parliament. So in this constitutional scheme, the sovereign is the Parliament, and Parliament can make any laws that it desires, and Election Commission of Pakistan is then required to fulfill those laws. At the same time, the government in all this constitutional setup is entitled to make its own policies. In this case, the government has made a policy that they would want to see the elections being conducted through use of electronic voting machines. This is their policy, and they're within their right to make that policy. Now, in order to implement that policy and to ensure that Election Commission of Pakistan follows that policy, the government needs law. Law can only be passed by Parliament. So the government did the right thing by putting in a bill before the National Assembly. The National Assembly passed that bill. The next step is the bill goes to the Senate. The Senate sent it to the committee. The parliamentary committee looked at it. There was a lot of debate there. The Election Commission of Pakistan also gave its comments, as did other organizations, including NGOs like BILDAT. And after that, the committee decided, because there was a boycott by the government members, the committee decided that they are not going to approve that bill. Now the next step is,
Let me just interject here. Basuzar, as far as the Election Commission is concerned, they've raised issues. They've said that the government has railroaded it without taking them into confidence. They haven't, there are certain limitations that the Election Commission has indicated with respect to time, with respect to expertise, all of those issues as far as the electronic voting machines are concerned. Do you think perhaps the government could have gone about it in a better manner, in taking the Election Commission on board at an earlier stage?
come to that in a minute. So just to complete my narrative, now once the committee rejects this bill and the opposition is standing on one side, the election commission is standing on the other side, and the government policy is still there, what under the constitution, what is the forum that will now make the decision? How will this, let's say, the controversy or the dispute between the respective parties be settled? The Constitution says that in such a situation, the highest forum of the country, the Supreme Court, the sovereign, which is the joint house, the Senate and the National Assembly together, will debate this. So the comments that the Election Commission of Pakistan gave, some of which I will discuss in a minute, the comments that the Election Commission of Pakistan gave, the comments or the observations of the opposition, the points that the government has to make, all this will be discussed in the joint house, said there, and eventually people will vote on those bills. And if the joint house decides by majority that this is the law that should be followed, then the Election Commission of Pakistan has no choice but to follow that law. Right. So this is the situation. Now, insofar as the objections that were raised by Election Commission of Pakistan, I personally think that they were required by the parliamentary committee to give comments, and they were within their rights to give those comments. Now, some of those comments relate to finances. An objection is that the finances, there are not sufficient finances available with them to procure these machines and to procure the necessary staff that's required to manage these machines. Now there, the answer is that it is the government's duty to provide those finances, so the Election Commission should not worry about that. The other objections could be valid. That has to be debated. Those objections relate to, for example, the fact that according to the Election Commission of Pakistan, there is not sufficient time to procure these machines, number one. Number two, they say that there is not sufficient storage space to store these machines for 2 years. Number three, they fear that some of these machines may break down due to electrical faults or due to weather conditions, etc. And they, number four, they think that they don't have sufficient pilot projects, successful pilot projects to implement all this. Now, all these objections will be debated. The government feels that 2 years is sufficient time to overcome these objections. Okay. Opposition feels that there is...
But if the Election Commission is going to implement this, isn't it the Election Commission within its right to say that they perhaps don't have that time?
Well, they have a right to say it, but as I keep saying, that once the Parliament passes the law, then they have their right finishes. Then they have to implement the law, because that's what the Constitution says, that they have to hold the elections free and fair, but in accordance with the law made by Parliament. So that is where the government goes out of the picture and Parliament comes into play. One more thing that I wanted to add here was that I have a certain concept about this. I've looked at everything. I've examined the various objections. I've examined and heard even the government side on this. And I think there's a very easy solution to this, and perhaps the Parliament is going to follow that solution. And the solution is as follows. Okay. If you go and want to vote, the first thing that happens is that you are identified. So after your identification, you are given a ballot box, a ballot paper. You stamp the ballot paper, you fold it, and you put it into the ballot box. And then those ballot boxes are collected, they are counted in front of everyone, and a consolidated result then goes to the main election commission, and the entire constituency result is then compiled. This is the process that has been followed in the last election, and this is the process that will still be followed in this election. Now, where do the EVM comes in? The EVM machines, the electronic voting machines come in as an addition to all this. So when you've been given the ballot paper and you stamped it, then you also, in addition to putting that paper in the ballot box, you punch a button on that machine and you actually record your vote. So that now there is a double security. When it comes to counting, you can count the ballot boxes and the papers in the ballot boxes, and you can actually count and verify it with that machine. So this is an additional security. One of the main objections that happens is in the past elections that the ballot boxes are the counting is not right, and the ballot papers are stuffed in ballot boxes. These are the kind of objections that arise. These objections will be eliminated. The law
Fair enough. I will come back to you. Rashid Saab, you've been following the discussion here.
I think one point that we are missing here is that it has been a tradition in Pakistan that election laws or amendment to the elections are decided with the consensus, not with the majority vote.
Okay.
And now the situation is this, that opposition parties are not on the same page with the government on this EVM, and neither is the ECP. So if the government is going into the joint sitting and government has strength to get it passed, the very legitimacy of the next elections will remain questioned, because there is no consensus, and we have seen precedents that opposition parties and government parties sitting together for electoral reforms even in 2014 when they started working on that, and we saw this Elections Act 2017 coming up with a consensus. So elections are a sensitive issue, and any consensus law on election will earn the credibility.
You think even if it doesn't happen at this time with the majority, if the government manages to get this legislation passed regardless of the opposition, and there are many concerns on it, do you think that you're saying that it would still make the next election very controversial, because then it would, of course, allow them to crowd out?
Because many stakeholders will not be accepting that, and that will become the elections controversial even before the conduct of the elections. We have seen controversies in post-election scenario, but in this case we will see the pre-election controversies as well.
Right.
So I think this is the role of government, to forge consensus, to go forward, to engage with the Election Commission of Pakistan, engage with the opposition parties and other stakeholders, and forge a consensus on whatever reforms they want to make.
Right.
So that's the only path that we have good election law. And my fear is that in this imbroglio, the electoral reforms bill, the wholesale reforms bill will also be affected, and that will be very unfortunate.
Because of the issue of just the electronic voting machine. Right. I will come back to you. Kanwar Saab, do you agree? You think that, of course, we've been talking about the fact that if there is, in the absence of consensus between the government and the opposition, the next elections can become, controversial, whatever the results may be. Do you think that there is a possibility that the government will be able to get the kind of consensus that is needed to ensure that the process is smooth?
As narrated by Rashid Chaudhary, I agree with you. In principle, the government of Pakistan should take confidence into the election of Pakistan. Our Election Commission of Pakistan, the objected the 37 points. First of all, Government of Pakistan should resolve all the objections raised by the Election Commission of Pakistan. If the objection were not resolved, the future election will be controversial and nobody will accept it. So in the first term, government should resolve all the objections raised by the Election of Pakistan in its letter. On the other hand, the two federal ministers should have to tender apologize before the election of Pakistan, so that the constitutional issues which has already been raised by the two federal ministers should be resolved. First of all, Government of Pakistan should resolve the objection raised by the ECP. On the other hand, the two federal ministers should tender his apologize so that the election of Pakistan should feel comfortable, and the conflict between the election of Pakistan and the federal government should be finished, eliminated, and all the matters should be resolved amicably. So, in principle, the election of Pakistan is bound to act upon the law of election, as narrated our Sayyid Ali Jafar Saab, and I agree with him.
Right. Right. Let me go to Barrister Ali Zafar ji. Senator Saab, do you agree? You think that there is a chance that the ministers can apologize and there can be some sort of an amicable the relationship between the Election Commission and the government can be restored towards perhaps a smooth electoral reform process?
I think it is never in the interest of any government to have any confrontation with the constitutional institution. In fact, it's the government's obligation and government's intention always to strengthen those organizations. So I hope to see this issue resolved amicably. But one thing I wanted to just add here, I couldn't finish my last point fully. I just wanted to add here that the law that is being proposed by the government says that the machines have to be procured by Election Commission of Pakistan. So assuming that this law is passed and assuming that we arrive at a consensus on this, then one of the options available with the Election Commission is to maybe procure an electronic voting machine that can scan the ballot paper. No opposition, neither the opposition and nor the Election Commission should have any objection if that ballot paper that is stamped and recorded according to the normal process can be scanned through that machine, and the machine can then record that as a permanent record in the machine itself, which would assist, in fact, I think, in having free and fair elections. So there are many options available with the Parliament, the two houses when they sit together, and I think we should eventually arrive at a consensus, because it has been rightly pointed out that elections always, instead of making them controversial, it is in everybody's interest, all political parties' interest, to arrive at...
My last question to you, as far as the other reforms are concerned, we've been talking to Rashid Chaudhry Saab about this. If we leave the EVMs issue aside, do you think that there is general agreement on the other points within the bill?
Yes. Now the bill that was originally presented to the Parliament contained various things, and three categories were identified in the Parliamentary Committee of the Senate. One, some of the provisions were contrary to the Constitution in the proposed bill, and those were deleted. So everybody, the Election Commission of Pakistan pointed out, the opposition pointed out, and the government agreed that those were unconstitutional provisions and therefore they should be deleted from the bill. The second set of reforms, everybody agreed that yes, this is very good, this will improve the process, and therefore we should improve these. And the third set of provisions were provisions where suggestions were made how to improve the language or how to improve the concept behind those provisions. And an agreement was arrived at in the government, the opposition parties and even the Election Commission agreed that those provisions as amended are good provisions. So all these three sets of provisions were approved. Only two things where the problem arose or where there is not a consensus yet, and that is the reason it has actually gone to the joint house. One was the EVM, and the second was the question of how to actually allow the overseas Pakistanis to vote. through what
What
process.
about this latest Nadra issue now that has become another bone of contention between the Election Commission and Nadra?
As far as Nadra is concerned, I think, as I understand it, Election Commission of Pakistan has objected to the kind of language used in the letter that was actually, I think, disclosed in the papers today. And the Election Commission of Pakistan has rightly pointed out. Sorry?
The issue of funds also, apparently, they've asked for more money.
Yes, so that is between Nadra and Election Commission of Pakistan in terms of procurement of services.
Right.
And both separate institutions, that kind of a dispute, or rather call it that kind of a point of view from both institutions is acceptable. That's normal. There's nothing to get so concerned about that. It was, I thought that the only thing that was of concern was the language used by Nadra, and the Election Commission of Pakistan has pointed out that we should not use that kind of language in election. Conducting of elections is our duty. Your duty is to assist Nadra in whatever Nadra is to assist the Election Commission of Pakistan in whatever way Election Commission of Pakistan wants. So I think that those legal provisions are very clear, but sometimes there's some misunderstanding, and that unfortunately has come to the press. I think that should be resolved very quickly.
Right. Thank you for your comments, Barrister Ali Zafar. We will come back to you, but we want to go on a break. We'll take a short break and then come back and talk about the politics of Balochistan.
In rural Pakistan, the dhol is used to make public announcements after gathering people by beating it repeatedly. Goga Sai has become a symbol, a living symbol of the city of Lahore.
Welcome back. We have with us Shahid Hameed Rind, who's a journalist from Quetta, to talk about what's happening as far as Balochistan, the vote of confidence against Jan Kamal is concerned. We'll be talking about that. We'll be asking him what the situation is at this time. Shahid Sahab, what is the situation as far as the vote of confidence against him is concerned, and overall the scenario? Can you please tell us?
Yes, situation which is prevailing right now, political situation in Quetta and Balochistan, it's yet not cleared, because on 15th of September, opposition submitted vote of no confidence in Balochistan Provincial Assembly. Earlier, there was a feeling might opposition have the numbers, and opposition is that's why gathering and doing all the efforts. But very next day, when we see Balochistan Awami Party became separate in two parts, and one side who have the numbers of 18 MPAs, they went against the Chief Minister Jam Kamal, and they said they are unable to work under his supervision, under his chief executiveship. After that, situation is now very tricky. Government and opposition both are eyeing on those 18 members who are so-called angry right now. What they will decide, it will impact one side, either it's chief minister or government or opposition.
Right. But as far as the Balochistan Awami Party is concerned, within the party, what is the situation? What is the mood overall within the BAP?
If we see the numbers right now in the Balochistan Provincial Assembly, BAP has at least 25 MPAs, and few of them, their number is 16 to 17. They are not happy with their party president and the chief minister Jam Kamal. But still negotiations are going on. Chairman Senate Sadiq Sanjarani is here in Quetta, and other BAP senators and MNAs, they are continuously trying to negotiate with their angry members to at least convince them to come back in the government and accept Jam Kamal as the chief minister and clear the political scenario. But still things are not clear. Those who are angry, they are saying they have just one option, minus Jam Kamal, they will accept each and everything. Right now things are going on. Next 24 to 48 hours are very important.
Why do you think the situation has come to this point? What are some of the concerns as far as those who are unhappy with him?
This situation is prevailing from the day one when BAP formed, when Jam Kamal became the party president. Quddus Bizenjo, who was right now a Speaker of the Balochistan Assembly, he was interested to become a party president. But he not get that opportunity to become a party president. After that, he was wishing to become a chief minister. Again, his wish was not fulfilled. After that, many times, at least three times, he tried to topple the government and the political system, but he not get that opportunity. This time, Quddus Bizenjo has some other MPAs like Sardar Saleh Bhutani, Sardar Abdurrahman Khetran, Zahoor Buledi, Akbar Afghani, and Bushra Rind. These are those MPAs who are facilitated by Chief Minister in last 3 years, but on some personal stakes. Now they are not happy with the Chief Minister and they are supporting the Quddus Bizenjo and the current opposition, which is in Balochistan Assembly, on Jamiat Ulama Islam and BNP Maker.
Right. Thank you so much for updating us. Thank you for being with us, Shahid Hameed Rind, on the issue of what's happening in Balochistan as far as the vote of confidence against Jam Kamal is concerned. Overall, of course, we spoke about the issue of electoral reforms, the issue of EVMs, and the fact that, it seems that the best solution, of course, would be for the government and the ECP to resolve their issues, and as we had Senator Ali Zafar with us, and, overall, there seemed to be that opinion that they would resolve their issues, and the way forward would be to come to some sort of agreement so that the next election is not affected, is not controversial. Let's hope that the government and the opposition, the ECP, can do that. Thank you so much for joining us today on Perspective.